Hello everyone, this is Suneve, and I'm coming to you with Rose Petals, an Eyeless Jack X-Reader by Afflicted-Alibis. We're going to be starting off with Chapter 26, Familiar Faces. You were a deer in headlights. Portia screamed as the proxy pinned her to the floor, sinking its rotten teeth into her shoulder and just barely missing her neck from all of her thrashing. She attempted to kick it off, to shove it off, to do anything to delay the inevitable. She sputtered out begs of mercy between her cries, saying she did not want to die, that she would do anything if it stopped. You didn't know why she bothered. It wasn't as if the thing could truly understand human language anymore, at least as far as anyone knew, and even if it did, it would not have listened anyway. The sound of flesh tearing was drowned out by her pain shrieks, blood pooling out of her wounds and spattering across the room as the proxy had its way with her meaty exterior. It let out an angry growl before striking with its teeth again, biting down this time on her neck. Portia's cries were drowned out by gasps for air and then choking gurgles. She sporadically twitched and kicked underneath the decayed monster before her body finally succumbed and went limp. You watched in silent terror as the proxy proceeded to whip out of a broken knife and dig it into Portia's now still chest. It worked away as it let out distorted, wheezy breaths, carefully carving into her chest cavity. What preceded was the carnal sound of skin and bone breaking as it plucked off her ribs, tossing them aside afterward. The stinking sensation of bile hit the back of your throat, but you forced it down. The proxy drove a hand into her chest, the squishing, fleshy noise of it all forcing you to cringe. It pulled, and in seconds it had yanked her heart out and then shoving it into its decrepit mouth. It was then that you came to the conclusion that each proxy must be bound to eating a specific part of the body, and nothing more. You glanced over at the other two corpses in the room, figuring that other proxies came later to pick off their own share of the meal. Your eyes fell back on Portia, or what remained of her, and felt your jaw clench. At least she's at peace now. This is all over for her. Jesus Christ, Zeke's distressed voice muttered from across the room, and you looked over to see his face buried in his hands. Perhaps this would get to you more if you had not gone through what you already had. You would have been more disturbed if all of your thoughts and concerns were not on Liam, and if this had already happened to him off in some other room, and on Jack, and if he had already torn into some other innocent person against his will. You squeezed your eyes shut, lowering your head as the wretched sound of the proxy devouring its meal droned in your ears. A few minutes passed of this, and it left afterwards. In truth, you knew there was no way to get out, and just between the two of you, but you were scrambling for anything to keep sane. The last thing you wanted was for what just happened to Portia to happen to you. You were hopeless, but desperate. If only you could just see Jack, and then maybe, just maybe, you could have a fleeting sense that you could all escape, even if just by a margin. Jack. It was as if your pleading thoughts had summoned him. The locks unlatched once more, one by one, and you had not bothered to look up this time. But you knew the moment the static crackled in your ears and you heard him groan in pain. Your entire body froze, your mind was attacked by 100 thoughts at once, overwhelming it and leaving you momentarily numb. You looked up at him, your throat was seized by the invisible hand of grief, tightening it to choke down the sobs that fought to erupt from your core. Tears stung your eyes. Jack was hunched in on himself as he staggered into the room, his mask off, his face was screwed with pain, and he clutched his stomach as if he were attempting to fend off the hunger that was pulling him slowly towards Zeke. His breaths were disgustingly reminiscent of the proxy's, saliva dripping from the mouth, which was drawn back in a snarl. Like Portia, you couldn't look away, a deer in headlights. He ripped Zeke apart, though it was clear that some part of him was still trying to fight himself. To fight the violent hunger inside of him, Zeke died slow, but was devoured quickly. Jack had taken no time in puncturing the other man's abdomen, his tendrils messily working out the slimy kidneys and slipping them into his mouth where he chewed with mad desperation. At least it wasn't me, was all you could think, as much as you hated yourself for it. As Jack finished gorging on the organs, his breathing having since evened out as he hunched over the corpse, 2 tendrils shot through the door toward him. The static crackled in your ears once more as they coiled around Jack, who growled in irritation but did not fight it overall. In seconds, he was yanked through the door, and the door slammed shut and locked, the static disappearing and leaving you in a grotesque silence, leaving you without Jack once again. Your body gave into the weight of stress, your eyes squeezing shut, and he was alive. Jack was alive, and he still hadn't been turned. And why? It was difficult to think clearly. The stench of fresh death was rotting in your nose, and your eyes were heavy with exhaustion. You curled up on the floor, trying to make yourself as comfortable as you could with nothing to do, and your mind too muddled by everything that happened. You slowly drifted off to sleep. You woke once more to the sound of the door opening. Groaning, and you lifted your head to the blinding light. cringing and squinting as you had done before. The stench of the room was quick to wake you up as you peeled yourself off the floor, your stiff joints creaking in protest. Footsteps sounded, and at first you thought it was another proxy, until you realized how even they were, and there was a surprising lack of growling. Blinking to adjust your eyes, you realized a silhouette that was oddly shutting the door behind it was in a hooded robe. You shifted where you sat on the floor, though the sound of your chains rattling pulled your mind back to what happened before you had passed out, and you wondered if this had something to do with whatever they planned with Jack. The figure was no doubt a cultist, and your heart rate began to pick up as a million different scenarios played out in your mind. Your brows were furrowed as you stared up at the approaching figure, and between them was a gentle throbbing that was threatening to worsen into a headache. What? You stopped and cleared your throat, only now realizing how dry your mouth was. What does it want with me? Christ, Ryan. They'd not give you anything to fucking drink in here? You jolted upright, gasping. Jeff? Shut it, he quickly hissed in a whisper, lowering down in front of you. Now your heart was really racing. A sudden bout of energy had shot into you, coursing through the entirety of your body and leaving you with the urge to get up and move. And it felt like a lot like hope. And hope you never thought you'd feel again at that. You're here? Why? You asked as your befuddlement cleared in your hoarse and now low voice. Why are you here? The fuck do you think? He questioned back in reply, yanking the oversized hood down. Even if I wanted to leave your sorry asses, that thing would still be fucking after me. Even though the man standing before you was the one who'd caused you nothing but stress and trouble before, you couldn't help the way your mouth was stretched wide at the sight of him. I almost missed hearing so many swear words in one sentence, you chuckled. Jeff gave his signature annoyed look. This isn't the time for some mushy reunion, Kay. Suddenly he shifted closer, one of his robed hands shifting. Lift your hands up. I'm sick of the smell of this place, and this robe is hotter than the damn sun. You complied and realized the hand he shifted was holding a key as he took a hold of the cuffs. How did you get the key, and how did you get in here unnoticed? You inquired as he unlocked the cuffs, which then dropped to the ground with a noisy clank. Your mind went back to Jack and Liam, and your racing heart grew heavier, suddenly impatient for answers. Jeff met your gaze, the expression on his face abruptly turning serious. Didn't. He released a heavy breath. Didn't get here unnoticed, I mean. He moved his hands again, and more chains rattling came after. Oh. Still cramped from your nap on the floor, you pulled yourself to your feet as Jeff did. Holding your hands out, he reapplied the cuffs but didn't lock them. Make sure they don't fall off, he told you. You could hardly breathe properly as you stood there, shifting. There were so many things you had wanted to ask and needed to ask, and it was suffocating. The scarred man glanced around the room. Hell, he muttered. This their feeding ground or something? You lowered your hands carefully, hands clenching into fists as you tried to even your breathing. Yeah, two of them were killed yesterday. He looked back to you. That's so? One of them was Jack. Jeff stepped closer. There was a flash of panic in his eyes as it was gone as quickly as it had arrived. They ate him? No, you corrected hastily after. No, I meant he killed one of them, ate them. He slowly nodded, his eyes lowering. Right. I guess that means he hasn't seen Jack. Jeff glanced at you, then the ground again, and then looked at you again before turning away. You thought it strange, seeing him behaving so nervously. It almost seemed as if he were stalling. Jeff, are you okay? You asked. He turned his head back to you. Are you? You knew he didn't care. It was only to avoid answering the question. Shaken, but I'll live, I think. Your turn, you told him softly. An irritated sigh left him. Fine, just thinking shit over. Is it about what you did to piss the Harbinger off? The Harbin what now? That's what the cultists called the faceless thing. Jeff began to pace the room, the dried bits of blood and remains crunching under his boots. No, yes, fucking, sort of, okay? It was still a peculiar sight, seeing him as he was. You were used to hearing and seeing nothing but anger and hatred from him, and this was softer, somehow. Irritated but more patient, as if something had finally clicked for him. Look, he went on, it was hell sneaking into this damn place, and we only have one shot at this shit, or we're all fucking dead. You have a plan? I was lucky when it worked the first time. It might not work again. You blinked. First time? Jeff slowed to a stop, apparently contemplating what he wanted to say. The heavy death-filled aura of the room was weighed down further with the heavy tension suddenly radiating between the both of you. Do you? The words seemed to get caught in the tangled web of stress in his throat. You remember what I mentioned to you at the farmhouse? He asked, words reluctant and voice solemn. Something about taking something important from the Harbinger? Jeff said, lowered, his back facing you. My, brother. He found me one night, and I didn't know he was, Look, he found me, but he was being followed by the proxies. There was a swarm of them, and they took him. They took him to this place. I tracked those fuckers all the way here. I'd kill one of the cultists and pose as them. Apparently that faceless fuck thought my brother had a lot of damn potential for what it was planning, and was gonna sacrifice him, due to what he did to Jack. He crossed his arms, head lowering. I was gonna save him, make up for past mistakes. I couldn't. Lou wasn't himself even before. I had to slip into a cell and kill him quietly. He paused after that, his shoulders bunching as if he were holding something in. I escaped through a window after, and got halfway through the damn woods before it realized what I'd done. Since then, it's kept its eye out for me, with proxies always on the move, hunting me. I met Jack a month after that, and you should know the rest from there. He frowned, slowly stepping closer to him. Jeff, I'm sorry. That must have been terrible. He shook his head, but still refused to face you. Like I said, Wyan, I don't want your pity. A small sigh escaped through your nose. It's okay that you told me. It doesn't make you weak. You then smiled softly. Or any less of an asshole. That's not... He stopped himself, rolled back around to face you with a disdainful expression. Whatever. I'm gonna go do now what I couldn't back then. We'll get Jack back, and you'll get your brother back. If it isn't too late to get Liam back. It will be if we keep standing here. He snapped with sudden impatience. They'll start suspecting something's up if I take too damn long anyways. Oh, right. Gonna need the wounds old Jack gave me reworked when this is all through, by the way, he then added. You'd almost forgotten about those. We'll tell him. Jeff then pulled the hood back over his head, covering the smirk that had slid up his face. Now, let's go get your family back. That is the end of that chapter. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time, bye-bye.